Just Hello, I am Denise Murphy McGraw, one of the founders and national co-chairs of Catholics Vote Common Good. I'm honored to be here tonight with my fellow co-founders and some of our special guests to talk about all that the organization has been up to since the last time we met in one of these settings and where we're going to go from here. As many of you know who were involved over the years with this organization, Catholics Vote Common Good is a national organization that was born out of Catholics for Biden in 2020. We are a group of people who, just like you, said they wanted to get involved. They wanted to see someone like them living their faith and living the social justice values that we all try to live every day as elected officials. And that's why we worked very hard for Joe Biden. We worked very hard to get local members of Congress and United States senators elected, and we succeeded. And in many instances, we were the difference in some of the key battleground states. I look to Pennsylvania as what we were able to do in that state. Michigan, Wisconsin, we all know them. We know those battleground states. But we took a vested interest in each of those states. We tried to make the difference from, during the pandemic, from our homes and wherever those homes were throughout the country, to export our energy and our enthusiasm and our expertise in some instances into those states, and to try to reach out to other Catholics and help elect the best possible candidates. We have continued to try to do that as best we can. Last year, we traveled the country in the Vote Common Good bus, which you will hear a little bit more about later on in our program, and we went to Ohio. We went to Pennsylvania again. We went to Wisconsin, Michigan, And we did outreach to people of faith, and we encouraged them to vote. And we did it in any way possible. We were reaching out to people we met them where they were, and did anything that we could to try to make a difference in the midterms. And I think we succeeded in many instances. I think we can all agree. Moving forward, we felt it was very important to get everybody together, to bring people up to date as to where we are, and to talk a little bit about where we're going to go, because obviously President Biden has already announced his reelection campaign, and he will need us. And so will those key battleground states throughout the country, where they are going to be running and fighting for control of the House and control of the Senate. And we really can make a difference again. We're going to ask you tonight to do a few things. One, become more involved, support us, join our efforts. If you're not already getting updates or following us on social media, please do that. Share what we are doing. Can you bring in 5 friends who can get more involved, who they might live in your state, they might live across the country, but can you bring in individuals who, like you, live their faith and are looking to people who live their faith and those Catholic social justice values that are important to us and dear to us. Bring in folks that believe in those things and want to see people and elected officials who are working for the common good. And adopt a state. I live in a state that will not be a battleground state. Congressman Suozzi lives in a state that we don't live in that kind of state. But adopt a state, whether it's a state that'll be nearby, like for us in New York, it'll probably be Pennsylvania again, or a state that you'd like to adopt. You wish were nearby, you would like to be more involved with. Any one of those key battleground states that I mentioned before and that we all know by heart by now could certainly use people like us to get engaged, whether it's by phoning or texting or postcarding, or being able to help raise money to help us do key messaging. This time around, there were billboards in Pennsylvania, and there were other things like that, and they're not for free. So however you believe that you can become involved, we hope you will be, and we hope at the end of this, you will certainly want to get more involved. I certainly know that our first speaker is somebody who has he has energized me. He has mentored me. He has been somebody that I have looked up to, whether it has been as one of the youngest mayors or the youngest mayor in the city of Glen Cove in Long Island. He was my county executive, and I was very, very proud of that in Nassau County, Long Island, where he turned around a mess. He inherited a financial and an ethical mess, and he turned it around. He is known as a no-nonsense elected official who gets things done. As a member of Congress, he was a member of the key Ways and Means Committee. He was a very, very powerful Democrat. He stepped back at the end of December, and now we're all going to boo him. We're going to start by booing him. Congressman Suozzi stepped down, and we got George Santos. And I still love him, but but he remains a key figure both in the Catholic social justice movement, in the Democratic movement, in working to get Democrats elected. And he has been a key advisor to this organization, and he's truly going to take us to the next level. We know that because we know the work that he does. He lives his faith. Like many of you, he has paid for 3 Catholic college tuitions. He has 3 superstar kids. His daughter went to Fordham. His son went to BC, where he was a superstar baseball player. He was drafted by the New York Mets. Again, I won't hold that against him. It just makes me love him more. But it's things we talk about in private. And his other son is at Georgetown. He has raised superstar kids. He and his wife have a beautiful family. They have a commitment to the community. They have a commitment to our faith. And I am honored to have him working on this project with us. Congressman Tom Suozzi. Hello, good night, good evening.
Thank you, Denise. Thank you so much. We'll see how long George Santos is going to last. Uh, thank you so much for all the great work you're doing, Denise. And Pat, thank you so much for the great work you're doing. And Doug, thanks so much for your help. And Frida, thanks so much for being with us tonight. And thank you to all of you who are joining us tonight. We have a lot of work to do. Uh, Before I give any remarks, I want to introduce a video from a good friend of mine who I served in Congress with, who's very well known by Catholic Democrats throughout the country. She and I share something in common. We're the only two first-generation Italian Americans that were served in Congress. Her mother was born in Italy, and my father was born in Italy. So let's listen to a great Catholic social justice message coming from my good friend Rosa DeLauro, Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro from Connecticut.
Hello, Catholics vote common good. It is a pleasure to join you. As a Catholic in Congress, I am proud to be part of the living Catholic tradition, a tradition that unfailingly promotes the common good, expresses a consistent moral framework, and values the need to provide a collective safety net to the most vulnerable. As a legislator in the U.S. House of Representatives, I work every day to advance the dignity of every human being. I believe that the government has a moral purpose. That's what my faith has taught me. I am proud to be a Democrat who advocates for working families, middle-class families, and the most vulnerable. While many believe we are the silent majority, in 2020, Catholic Democrats made their voices heard and helped elect our country's second Catholic president. The 2024 election is right around the corner. We, as Catholic Democrats, must mobilize now. I thank you for the work that you do. Onward.
So, I think that Rosa really just says it all for all of us. Everything she said is the reason that we're part of this movement, the reason that we're on this call. But we have to do a better job. We see that Pew Research shows that if you attend church, religious services once a month or more, you're much more likely to vote Republican, 70%. The more secular you are, the more likely you're going to vote Democratic. We need to do a much better job as Democrats talking about our faith, talking about the things that we care about, much like Rosa just did in her video. But we also have to build a much stronger organization to get out to voters. I was the first member of Congress to endorse Joe Biden for president. He announced at 7 in the morning, and I endorsed him at 7:20 in the morning because I saw that he was what the country and what our party needed, especially at that time. But now we have to prepare for 2024. So there's an organization out there by a very conservative movement called Catholic Vote. And Catholic Vote is really cleaning our clocks as far as their organization goes. And we have to think about what kind of organization we need to build that's as or more effective than this right-leaning group. So let me just tell you a couple of things. I'm going to bore you for a good 3 or 4 minutes with some statistics, just so you need to know what we're up against. Catholic Vote was founded in 2008, and it's a conservative 501c4 nonprofit political advocacy group, and connected with a political action committee led by a guy named Brian Birch out of Madison, Wisconsin. Catholic Vote has 30 employees, or had 30 employees as of December of 2022. 30 employees. I don't know if they're all full-time or not, but 30 full-time and part-time employees. They participated in 12 successful campaigns with thousands of volunteers in 2022. They publish a newsletter daily, a daily newsletter that has 380,000 subscribers. And their goal is to reach 650,000 subscribers by January of 2024. They've started a Spanish language daily newsletter. Their goal is to have 50,000 people on that. They create videos, some of which have been very controversial, especially when Obama was president, and about Nelson Mandela. But they had 18 million views in 2022. They keep a heroes and zeros list of Catholic politicians as part of what they call their Catholic Accountability Project. 700,000 votes were cast in 2022, and they named our President Biden their number one zero, if you can imagine. They regularly attack the president as part of the Biden report on issues like abortion, LGBT, and immigration. They organize email and letter writing campaigns. They use the Edify platform. They've done 39 podcasts with 2.5 million viewers, and they did 1.4 million texts before the 2022 election. We've got to build a similar organization that represents our voices. We have to get the message out there. So I just want to point out again, this Loop newsletter, I looked at it on May 10th, 2023. And that day, this is what was on their newsletter. Border, quote, will be chaotic for a while, close quote. Quote, damning evidence of Biden family corruption. Pro-life leaders meet with Trump. Left-wing poll finds majority opposed trans. Loopcast podcast with 40,000 subscribers. Finding happiness at work, Catholic 101, Saint of the Day, daily psalm and readings, miracle and photo. This is their typical day, often hitting the right's hottest issues of the day, abortion, LGBT, immigration, and what they call hypocritical Democrats. And then they have some lighter Catholic targeted fare, what to cook during Friday and Lent. So you can imagine, this group is growing, and we have to build a commensurate group that can get our voices out there effectively. So we don't know exactly what their budget is. We're going to do more research on that. Pat thinks it could be as high as $30 million or $50 million. But right now, we're doing this as volunteers and using a wonderful organization that we're piggybacking with. We need to, I believe, and I think that Denise and Pat believe, we need to form our own 501c4, our own not-profit political advocacy group with an attendant political action committee. We've got to raise $500,000 by September to hire at least 3 full-time employees. We've got to use those employees to start a daily newsletter, and we've got to raise more money. And we should set a goal to raise $3 million and have 10 full-time employees by January of 2024. We've got work to do. Now, Bishop Barron, I listen to Word on Fire often, and he had something the other day about the culture of contempt that exists in our country right now. And this is very much in keeping with a book that was written by a fellow named Arthur Brooks at Harvard, who spoke at the National Prayer Breakfast, but his book was Love Your Enemies. And he talked about the fact that we can disagree with each other. And it's okay to disagree with each other. We should, if we all agreed with each other, we should probably see a psychotherapist. It's okay to disagree with people, but we don't have to hold each other in contempt. We don't have to roll our eyes. We don't have to hate the people we disagree with. We can't fall into the trap, which I think that the Loop and Catholic Vote has done, which is trying to demonize Democrats. We instead need to point out differences and point out the issues that we care about. Many of us look at Republicans and say, how can they be Christians? How can they be? They've got people that are racist in their ranks. They're anti-immigrant. They don't care about the earth. They don't do enough to support those most in need. How can they be Christians? And they look at us and they say, how can they be Christians when they've got their positions on abortion and on LGBT issues? We have got to figure out how can we advance our agenda without advancing this culture of contempt. But we also need to be more well organized. So to do that, we've got to have our own 501c4. We've got to raise $500,000 by September and hire full-time employees. We've got to raise $3 million by September and get 10 full-time employees. And we've got to really gear up for 2024. We've got to get our voices out there. I want to thank the folks that are on this call today, especially Denise and Pat and Doug and Frida, for the work that they're doing already. Let's work together. Let's try and make the world a better place. Let's love our neighbors. And let's do the very difficult part of one of the most difficult concepts Jesus ever gave us, to love our enemies. So let's figure out how to move forward and advance our Catholic agenda in a way that is consistent with our values. Thanks so much, everybody. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you very much, Congressman. As you can see, he's got a passion for this, and he's not fooling around. We were very fortunate that he was willing to join our team to help identify and put together a plan for us. We are working very hard to move forward on many of these initiatives, and you can see that in addition to his passion and his expertise, he truly has a network of connections throughout the country that he is willing to lend to our efforts, much the way Doug Paget has been and Vote Common Good has been, to take us under their wing, to help us, to get us up off the ground. So we've been very fortunate. And all of that happened because one day we met Patrick Corlin, who has been working with Vote Common Good for years. He has been working for the Franciscan Action Network. He has been working for Catholic social justice issues. He is the only, I'm very fond of saying he is the only person I know whose Zoom profile picture is of him, them in handcuffs, and Patrick proudly being arrested at a social justice rally. He's again a person who gets things done. He is my partner in this, and we are all very, very blessed that he has been willing to spend his time and his energy and his efforts toward moving forward Catholics Vote Common Good. Patrick.
Thank you, Denise. And thank you, Tom, Congressman Tom. Just want to say a couple things. I've known Congressman Tom for a while. I've known Rosa for a long while. When Rosa first ran for Congress, she held my daughter in her arms, who was a baby, and used that as a campaign, one of her campaign flyers. And my daughter's 33 now, so give you an idea how long we've been together. But I also want to say, Denise mentioned about me being an activist. I'm a Catholic activist, writer, organizer, and troublemaker. And when I was organizing events at the Capitol, when we had a number of events, Catholic events around immigration, around climate, and we would be in either the legislative, the congressional office, the Senate office building. We'd be in the rotunda of those buildings, and sometimes up above us, where there was a balcony and all, there would be members of Congress walking by. Some would wave to us, some would, give us a thumbs up. But Tom would always come down and stand with us when we were there. He walked the walk. He would stand there next to us. He would protest with us. He would march with us. And I'm forever grateful for that, Tom, and for everything that you've done when you were in Congress and before. I also want to say one other thing. I'm married to a first generation Italian Catholic. So can I join your and Rosa's group, Tom? We sat by and allowed our faith and our Catholic beliefs to be hijacked by people claiming to be Catholic, but they were preaching a gospel of hate and fear. You just have to look in Florida and Texas, two of our largest states that have Catholic governors, for an example of that. The message that these groups, like Tom mentioned, Catholic Vote, are all about promoting, it's centered around Catholic Christian nationalism. And if you're not familiar with that, you should learn about that term, learn about it, and be fearful of it, because it's not something that's new. It's not a new message. This is a message that has been around. In 2020, the German Catholic Bishops' Conference issued a letter of apology. They were apologizing for the actions that Catholic leaders, bishops, priests, lay Catholic political leaders, and business leaders took in support of Adolf Hitler and Nazism during the 30s and 40s. In the letter, they issued the letter 80 years later, so better late than never, I guess. But in the letter, they said that these folks, they got caught up in a movement of Christian nationalism, and they forgot the message of the Gospels. So we need to really remember, this isn't a new thing. This has been going on before. We have to stand up and fight against it. We should also remember that during the time of the Nazis, the first group that they went after was not Jewish people. The first group that they went after was the LGBT community. And we see that happening today around the country. We often hear that, Catholics, we shouldn't really be involved in politics. Pope Francis had made it very clear when he advised us that good Catholics, we need to participate for the common good. Sometimes we hear a good Catholic is not interested in politics, but this is not true. Good Catholics immerse themselves in politics by offering the best of themselves. So we really need to come together, as Tom had said. We need to raise the money, but we need to come together in support of candidates, Catholic candidates who believe in caring for the poor and the marginalized, who believe in the common good. We need to come together to really counter this Catholic's message of hate that's out there. So now it gives me great pleasure to introduce a friend of mine, Frida Berrigan. She's an author, an activist, and a mom. She wrote the book, It Runs in the Family, on being raised by radicals and growing up into rebellious motherhood. And I'm really grateful for Frida. I'm more grateful for her parents and her uncle, because when I was growing up and I was becoming an activist, I was formed by people like her mom and dad and her uncle, and it was their leadership that helped move me into becoming a Catholic activist. So Frida, take it away.
Hello, everybody. I hope you can hear me and see me okay. I'm grateful to be here with you shoulder to shoulder in this online space where we're all in our own little boxes. And grateful to Patrick for the invitation and for the introduction. And to Denise and Doug and Congressman Suozzi. I must say, that I struggled a little bit with this invitation as somebody who identifies mostly as an anarchist Catholic, who finds my spiritual home amongst Unitarian Universalists and the Catholic worker for the most part. I also, because this is a Catholic group, want to confess that for my mental health and general sanity, I've largely been trying to create a cone of unelection, unnational politics around myself and my community. But as I kind of look around, that seems like an irresponsible position to take in this moment, as the 2024 presidential election started the minute the 2020 election was over. And now the fight has turned deadly with politically motivated violence, hateful rhetoric, and a tinge of civil war about the whole enterprise. So I'm here as sort of as in a spirit of bridge building and appreciation deepening, wanting to lean in to my Catholic progressive family and to express gratitude for the space that you all are holding. And hope that it expands. My father, Philip Berrigan, was a World War II veteran. He was a field decorated lieutenant who emerged from the killing fields of Europe without a scratch on his physical body, but deeply wounded by what he saw and what he did, deeply in need of atonement. And he found community and movements as the location of this lifelong process, his spiritual cleansing. First, he found the Jesuit order of priests, and then from that position, he found the civil rights movement. That led him to the movement against the war in Vietnam and Indochina, and then into the movement to abolish nuclear weapons. As someone whose life was saved by the dropping of the atomic bomb on Hiroshima, he and his fellow soldiers were literally preparing for a land invasion in Japan on August 6, 1945. He was fiercely, deeply, personally committed to nuclear abolition. My father died in 2002, but this October would mark his 100th birthday. And so I've just kind of been really deeply steeped in his memory, in his teaching, and his example in this year in particular. And he would say, and was fond of saying, don't vote. It only encourages them. And if you probed him further, he would say, if voting mattered, they would have made it illegal. Now, these views always got a chortle when he expressed them, and they certainly had their time and their place. But we're now in a political moment when they want to encourage most of us not to vote. And for large swaths of the American people, voting is illegal, and is becoming more and more difficult. So we're also at a moment when the Catholic American identity, I like the way Patrick spoke about it being hijacked, but we're also at a moment when the institutional church is weak and vulnerable and losing cultural ground, right? The sexual abuse, cover-ups, subsequent lawsuits, criminal cases, now resulting in payouts and emptying church coffers, fundamentally tarnishing the institutional church's power and authority. And I see one of the reasons that the institutional church, has turned uber conservative, as the congressman was describing, is in an effort to try and remain relevant, to be part of the conversation. And while it's not a good long-term strategy, it has deeply devastating consequences. But we are more than the institutional Roman Catholic Church. We are a people of God. And that people still has a voice, has greater relevance and power than ever before, particularly if we use it. Our Catholic social teaching calls on us to care for creation, to center the poor and vulnerable, to forge bonds of solidarity throughout the world, and work for peace and dignity for all people, and to participate in the social and political work from the strong foundation of those bedrock values. And this is powerful stuff. Denise, are you coming there? Because I'm out of time. Okay.
No.
This is powerful.
No, that was just
stuff.
my mistake, Frida. You keep going.
Okay.
You just keep on going.
Okay, great. And we see the strength of Catholic social teaching, for example, in Archbishop John Wester's pastoral letter on nuclear abolition. The Archbishop of Santa Fe issued Living in the Light of Christ's Peace, a conversation towards nuclear disarmament. And what's so powerful about this pastoral letter is that it begins with his own journey, his own witnessing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and then locating himself in the New Mexico Archdiocese in the beginning of the nuclear age, and the work that people in New Mexico did to make the bomb possible, to invent the nuclear weapons. He writes, "It becomes clear to me that the Archdiocese of Santa Fe must be part of a strong peace initiative, one that would help make sure that these weapons are never used again, that we would never destroy our planet and one another." And pushes for a conversation. And I think that emphasis on conversation and conversion is really important. In the course of the pastoral letter, Archbishop Wester name checks my friends and mentors, Father Louis Vitale and Sister Megan Rice, as prophetic people who helped him take a courageous stand for nuclear disarmament. And so then we see kind of this dynamic between the people pushing the church and the church pushing the people and amplifying the challenge. I went to Mass last Tuesday in a backyard in East Hartford, a kind of oasis amid a poor and working class neighborhood there. And we were my son and I were at the Hartford Catholic Worker, St. Martin de Porres. A folding table covered with a bright cloth served as the altar, and the woman who read the Tobit reading that Tuesday struggled with the names, and we all giggled in empathy. Yep, we've all been there trying to pronounce these ancient words with our modern mouths. The prayers of the faithful went on for a long time as people called out their concerns, their worries, their deepest heart longings. And we amplified each one with "God, hear our prayer." And that's the heart of our Catholic social teaching, that your concern, your worry, your need is mine. And that as your sibling, I am obligated to take up your burden too. I have a friend who lives at the Los Angeles Catholic Worker who likes to point out that there are 5 million Catholics living in greater Los Angeles and only about 70,000 unhoused people. In New York, where I lived for more than 10 years and where I served the poor as part of the Catholic Worker, New York Catholic Worker for a time, there are 2.8 million Catholics and an estimated 67,000 unhoused people. And perhaps that statistics is a little old now that Southern Republicans are busing refugees and asylum seekers into Manhattan in the cruelest form of political theater. But from New York to Los Angeles and the countless cities and towns in between, the crisis of homelessness has become a subject of intense hand-wringing and routine calls for the need for new policies and programs with big price tags. But for my friend at the LA Catholic Worker, it's just a math problem, and the math is on our side, right? That there's an opportunity for his church community to live the gospel, to perform the works of mercy. In his view, LA Catholics should be jostling, they should be pushing each other out of the way in order to be the first to open up their homes to just one person who finds himself without a home. Because this is what Christ taught us. Not necessarily to start an organization or to give to a charity, but to perform these works of mercy ourselves. Just as you did it to one of the least of these who are members of my family, you did it to me. We're called to feed the hungry, give drink to the thirsty, welcome the stranger, care for the sick, visit the imprisoned. I offer this just to remind us of the personalism that needs to be at the heart of our work for social and political change. It's not about outsourcing our faith practices to social service agencies and the professional class. We're not supposed to be calling on others to care for people in a way that we're not doing ourselves. So Catholics vote for the common good, but we also work and serve and be the common good. And we can do that today and tomorrow and on election day and the day after and the week after. Pope Francis loves the works of mercy and shared, I am convinced through these daily simple actions of performing the works of mercy, we can achieve a true cultural revolution like there was in the past. If every one of us every day does one of these, this will be a revolution in the world. And that is the revolution that our nation needs. And it starts here with you and me and with the work of Catholics Vote for the Common Good. And perhaps that work, that revolution is already well underway. So I'll stop there and look forward to what others have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Frida. No one was trying to send you a message. No one was more surprised than I was when my face showed up on your screen. But thank you very much. That was beautiful. I know full well why Patrick felt so passionately about asking you to be part of this program tonight. I think you put to words what you've lived, your lived experience that you bring to this organization and to this program this evening. You do live the social justice life that so many of us aspire to live, and the works that you have done in your home community in New York City, throughout the country. You are somebody who is known far and wide for always helping those who cannot help themselves, and you put everyone else before yourself. And we are just so, and again tonight, by being here to help us with this meeting. And just thank you so very much, Frida. We're honored to have you here. Thank you. Like many of you, when you decided to get more involved, maybe in the Biden campaign in 2020, or, you started to get a lot of emails because we were all in lockdown, and maybe you got on a Zoom or two because there were certainly, about 10 or 20 each day. And if you asked any questions about getting involved, either in some sort of, faith leaders for Biden, or certainly for Catholics for Biden, um, every Catholic was given one name of somebody to call, and that was Kevin Hayes in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He, just as a volunteer, sort of took over the effort. He ran it from his kitchen table. He took all our phone calls. He helped organize. He ran phone banks, he ran Zooms, he got others involved, he energized people, and he really led the way during a time when we really, we were sort of forging new ground. Nobody knew how to run a campaign during a pandemic, during a lockdown. But Kevin figured it out. He connected with Catholics throughout the country. He helped lead efforts. He had more phone banks and more outreach than anybody I know. And he fielded those phone calls, and he made us all feel very, very welcome. He took all that. He took a little break, not really much. He went immediately into the Georgia runoffs and organizing and helping Catholics connect in Georgia. And then he said, well, what are we going to do from here? And he helped found Catholics Vote Common Good. He remains a driving force in all of this. Many of you here tonight get regular emails from him about what's going on throughout the communities throughout the country in the Catholic space. And we are very grateful for his leadership. We are thrilled that he could be here tonight. My dear friend and the founder of Catholics Vote Common Good, Kevin Hayes.
Thanks, Denise. Appreciate it. I just want to say a few things to everybody who's here tonight. First, thank you for taking the time to be with us. If you're familiar with Catholics for Biden's or Catholics for Senate Majority, the effort that Denise referred to in Georgia, it's good to have you back. If you're new, it's great to have you join us. We're here to really help people make connections. And that's what we want to try to do. And we want to try to help each of you make an impact in the best way possible in the election cycle in 2024. So I just want to say, if you know other people that aren't yet plugged into Catholics Vote Common Good, please have them register. Please have them get involved. We're going to hopefully have more regular virtual Zoom meetings like this to keep you informed and to continue to make connections. Just know that, we are here to help you. So if you don't know anybody else that's a Catholic that wants to work for the common good, we'll help connect you to them. If you know other people, we'll help you get more organized and help you, get to the point where you're making a difference in your area, whether it's with a congressional race, a Senate race, or ultimately the presidential race in 2024. We can help you have an impact, and that's what we need to do. And the other thing is we heard this again and again and again from people who plugged into Catholics Vote Common Good, which is, we're so glad you're here. So if you feel alone, if you feel like nobody else in your parish understands your desire to, vote, common good and promote social justice in your political thinking, that's what we're here for. So I just think it's great that we're getting started again. And there is a lot of work, as you've heard already, there is a lot of work to do. And that's why we're kind of starting earlier than we did in 2020. I hope it helps us have, as Denise said earlier, a similar impact that we did in 2020. We're going to need it. It's going to be a bruising race, and it's going to take everybody with hands on deck. So with that, I just want to say that we have decided to work with Vote Common Good. And Doug's here to tell you a little bit more about their organization, because they've been around a little longer and they've been tremendously helpful to us, including creating these virtual meetings in such a flawless, seamless way. So I want to introduce Doug Padgett from Vote Common Good.
Hey, thanks, Kevin. Kevin, you are and have been one of my heroes. Sorry, your picture's not on that screen right now. Sorry about that. I second all of those kind things that Denise said about your organizing and all. Hey, really good to be with you. I'm Doug Padgett. I live in Minneapolis. I'm not a Catholic, but I know a lot of them. And I'm one of the people that helped to found this effort called Vote Common Good. And Vote Common Good was designed to reach out to Catholics and evangelicals. These two groups of people that we know in the United States sort of religious political system often feel like their faith and their political identity become wedded together in a way that they don't know how to separate. And for a lot of people, unfortunately, it became a conservative expression of faith and a conservative expression of politics. And that became a very difficult thing for a lot of people, and they didn't know where to go. So we started an organization in 2018 to try to help and to support people who were going through an identity change. Maybe their faith was changing. For a lot of people, their faith was growing. They were deepening into their sense of faith. But they also knew that their public engagement with politics couldn't stay the way that it was. And the two things that we know to be true, one of those is that politics and faith are people movements. Yes, they involve systems. Yes, they involve structures. They need organizations. They need money. They need email lists. We need all of this stuff. But fundamentally, they're people movements. And secondly, we just can't keep doing things the way we've been doing them because it doesn't work, right? We've ended up in a situation where people feel like, I don't just want to switch teams and move from being a conservative Catholic or conservative evangelical to being a progressive one, or I don't just want to shift from voting for Republicans all the time because my faith tells me to now having a faith that just tells me to vote on the other side. People really want a different way to think about it. So the notion that the common good could be your organizing principle, the common good could be your voting criteria, that the way you see yourself is committed to each other. I come from a place where we had a fairly famous senator in some people's mind named Paul Wellstone. And Paul Wellstone used to say, we all do better when we all do better. And it was this sense that I heard, when I was a young college person, that the common good matters, the thing we all hold together. We might not all agree on the common sense. I mean, good grief. If we could all come to agreement on common sense, that's one thing. But we do know that we all do better when we all do better. And there's a lot of people who feel left out. There's a lot of people who don't feel like they have a place. The congressman talked about it. Kevin has talked about it. Denise, Frida, Patrick. That's why we're all here, is trying to find each other. So one of the things that we want to do is to do things. We have a little motto around Vote Common Good. When you live in a time of social crisis, you don't do nothing. You do something. And you just find a way to engage. Look, Frida, I really appreciate your comments. I also come from a family where my dad didn't vote. He would have been 98 had he lived so long, just a few days ago. And he didn't vote because he was a felon, because felons are not allowed to vote. We live in a strange world where in some states felons can't vote, but it's quite possible that in the next year and a half, you could vote for a felon. I mean, try to wrap your heads around that. But my dad lived in a time when felons were barred. And so I grew up in a family that also said, stay out of politics. There's nothing good there. I ran into a guy driving around in a Vote Common Good. I was driving around in a Vote Common Good vehicle yesterday, and somebody said, what is that group? Is that a voting group? And I said, yeah, we try to help faith voters stop voting for people like Donald Trump. Like when I'm really being sassy about it, that's what I say to people. And he goes, yeah, don't worry about me. I don't vote at all. I just stay out. And look, I get it. For some people, it's not going to be politics. It's not going to be voting. But you can do something. And for those of us who do care about voting, who do think that voting could be a way that you can engage in your life and it can be a thing you do, we want to help you know how to do that in a way that really connects deeply with the rest of your life and the rest of what you do. So our creativity around this, our doing something, not nothing, has meant bus tours, as Denise mentioned, traveling. In 2020, our plan was to start on January 2nd in Washington, D.C. and go to every state. And we held a presidential forum in Iowa, and we started on the road. And as we all know, in the middle of March, we came home and then figured out what we were going to do come August. So we organized online like we all did. And then we went back out and did socially distanced events and went to 36 states and held outdoor events and asked people if they would consider making the voting good their criteria. And what we've experienced in all of this work, traveling, doing online meetings, running weekly podcasts multiple times a week, people feel alone, and people don't know what to say because they live in a place, or they live in a family, or they go to a church where if they don't toe the line, they're going to lose friends. I want to tell you a story about a woman that I met in Michigan. She wasn't in Michigan. She was in Pennsylvania. Pardon me. A woman that I met in Pennsylvania. And she said, hey, my mom is going to come to the event tonight. And um, my father just recently died, and it's going to be the first time that she didn't vote for a Republican in her married life. And she said that she always wanted to honor her husband and vote the way that he did. So this person came, and I said, I met her, and she was in her early 80s. And I said, hey, is there any chance you'd be willing to have us record you and tell us some of your story? Because it was so powerful when she shared it briefly together. And she said, no, I can't tell this story publicly. And I said, oh, and then she paused and she said, because I play bridge with the girls and they won't let me if I tell them my story. Reminded me of a woman I did meet in Michigan. And she drove to our event like an hour and a half. We did an event in Grand Rapids, and she drove to the event, and she said, thank you for having this event. I need to leave town to do it. And I said, well, how come you need to leave town to go to an event like this? And she said, because I own the hardware store. And if they find out, there goes my business. I mean, the reality is that we live in a world where the social pressures are really high. People want to keep their friends and keep playing bridge. People want to keep running their businesses. And for some reason, the cost that they're going to pay for changing their vote is really high. So for some of us, we need a community like this because we need to be motivated. And for some of us, we need a community like this because it's really putting a lot at risk. So it needs to stay a little quiet, or we need to do it a little more gently. And look, we understand that. So when we say things like we're asking you to support this effort, maybe it's going to be financial, and we'd ask you to consider that. I can't tell you how many people I've met that are like, look, I just don't go to church anymore. And as a former pastor, I'm hesitant to ever say to those people, like, whatever money you used to give to church, would you mind giving to an effort like this? But it's not a bad idea for some people, right, to consider something like that. So maybe you want to support it that way, or maybe you want to do some organizing, or maybe you have some good ideas, that your support means a lot. Look, all the money in the world doesn't change the world, but all the effort in the world needs to have money behind it. So we know and are unashamed about asking people to consider joining us when they're going to invest their money in the future of this country. So think about Catholics Vote Common Good for that. And then share this. And so when we say share it, look, we want you to share your story. On the website, votecommongood.com, there's a place where you can tell your story. I'd encourage you to go there. You just click on a little button. It turns on your camera. I mean, it asks you if it's okay. It turns on your camera and then gives you a chance for 3 minutes to tell your own story. And then we put those stories together so other people can see them. Or there's also a place where you could just write your story. Like literally, could you share your own story? Would you mind considering doing that, telling other people why this matters to you? And then when you share this stuff with other people, when you get an email from Catholics Vote Common Good, instead of reading it quickly and then, archiving it or putting in the trash, or if you're like me trying to understand what the difference between trash and archive is with, an email, I don't know, but you're going to do something with it, consider just forwarding it to 3 or 4 friends. Put a little group of people together and say, hey, here's that email newsletter I get. You don't have to subscribe yourself if you don't want to. I'll send it to you. Maybe they'll consider to register themselves. Maybe they won't. But would you share something like that? Would you consider putting a yard sign in your front yard that goes next to a campaign sign that says, I'm a Catholic who votes common good? And there's a lot of people who be like, wow, you're a Catholic and you're voting for a Democrat. I cannot tell you how many people we have met. Thousands who have said to us, I have never met a Catholic who votes for modern day Democrats. I'm like, really? Is that true? And then they'll say like, well, I was told that those people aren't real Catholics. The same thing on the evangelical side, the same thing across a number of religions that people just can't imagine. So would you share your story? Would you share an email? Would you share with your neighbors? And as Denise said, would you consider adopting a state or adopting a politician? Would you get yourself behind some? At Vote Common Good, we train candidates. We help candidates to know how to talk to faith voters. We do lots of interactions with candidates, people running for Congress, people running for Senate, people running for state offices. We have a whole campaign training module that we do with these people. And maybe there's a candidate that you'd like to support that's not in your state, or one that is that you haven't heard of. One of the things we also know is a whole lot of people have no idea who their representatives are. Like, just couldn't name them. A shocking number of people can't name the vice president at any given point, let alone their state legislator or even their congressperson. So would you be willing to adopt a candidate or to adopt a state or to adopt an effort and to share that more broadly. So we just want you to know that look, there's a lot going on. There's going to continue to be a lot going on. And we think it's really important to have an effort that really names Catholics who vote common good, because religion is about identity. Politics is about identity. A lot of people are having an identity crisis. So we know that it's important to name that. And we think that a more highly invested, a more built out effort that really helps Catholics find an identity with one another and for one another becomes really important. So I would just encourage you, if you'd consider it, to think about all those things and to share that, to share and to adopt and to support these kinds of efforts. And we have your email addresses now. If you're watching someplace where you weren't in the Zoom, we'd invite you to go to Catholics Vote Common Good and click on the keep me informed button there, and to stay up with all these efforts. So Denise, I will send it back over to you.
Thank you very much, Doug. I think you can all see why we feel so very fortunate and so very blessed that Doug has kind of taken in this ragtag group, helped give us some direction. We certainly had all the things that Patrick and Kevin talked about. We had a passion for this. We knew there was something more out there that we could connect to, and we certainly had the faith, both our Catholic faith and our faith in humanity around us, that we could be more involved. It could be better. We could help it be better. And Doug has helped us kind of get this organization off the ground. He has shown us how to run a top-notch organization. For those of you who are familiar, I actually got into all of this through Vote Common Good, just seeing the opportunity to send postcards. And that was how it all started. I really had no idea a couple of years ago. I knew that Joe Biden spoke about his faith a lot. I knew there are a lot of politicians in New York that certainly talked about their faith a lot, but I didn't know the organized faith voter activities that take place on the national level. And now, thanks to Doug and others, on the statewide and local levels. So, it has just really been, we are so very grateful to him and to the leadership of Vote Common Good. He's being modest, but please, make sure you friend them on Facebook as well, on social media. His regular podcasts are must-see TV. I try to catch them as often as they are on, because they're just interesting and they are fun. I want to thank everyone for being here this evening. We certainly had a panel to end all panels. Congressman Tom Suozzi, thank you so very much for being with us, for being the leader that you have always been, for being the person who, he is truly not only somebody who lives his Catholic faith, but he lives it fearlessly. I think back to how long he was one of the first people I ever really heard talk about immigration and talk about it in real common sense ways. And it was like he almost saw what was happening and what was going to happen 10 or 15 years later. And he's been a leader in immigration and so many other issues for so many years. And now he's going to help be a leader of this organization. So Congressman Suozzi, thank you so very much. Patrick, we cannot do this without you. Patrick Carlin, thank you very much. Kevin Hayes, who has founded this organization and continues to help lead it. Frida Barragan, thank you very much for being willing to join us tonight and to help us continue to get out the message of Catholic social justice. And of course, Doug, thank you very much, Doug Paget, for so many things that you bring to this, not the least of which we have the best looking Zooms in the business. So thank you all very much. Good night.
Good night, all.